It's not a military map. It's just, just to show people where Lingay and Gulf is relative to Manila and
Okay.
how the, you know, one I can't remember the name of the corps, which corps it was, but the main landing at Lingay and Gulf. Then the fascinating, the 11th Airborne landing south of Manila and making its way north, just so we can show people that.
Cool music.
Thanks.
Nick, we're just cool guys. We'll get you a BBC shirt or hat, and you can be part of the cool guys.
If I can get a golf shirt like you got, that'd be awesome.
I'll get you one.
It took me a while to get one of those, but I sure do love it.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all here this evening. Thursday, June 4th, 2026. This is Greatest Generation Live. And my name is Sean Hall. I'm Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. It's a beautiful day here in Pittsburgh, so I hope it's also beautiful where everybody else is. We are here with our host, Glenn Flickinger. Glenn, how are you?
Excellent, excellent. This is a string of gorgeous days in Pittsburgh. I think we moved to San Diego and didn't realize it.
Boy, don't tell anyone because I want to keep this going as long as possible. I don't want to jinx it because if it could be like this forever, Pittsburgh would be a hot spot.
Yes.
We'd be San
Diego. We could have the Navy here.
Oh, exactly. Get the Pittsburgh Navy. Yeah, we'll just park them right in the brown water of the Monongahela, or the Mon, as we call it. We are the Veterans Breakfast Club. It's so great to see you all here. Our mission is creating communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. And we've been doing this since 2008. We do this on our Thursday night Greatest Generation Live program. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Manila. We do it on our Monday night VBC Live program, which kind of covers more branches, more eras, kind of everything. It's a catch-all, but we have amazing conversations on there. I'm going to go over just sort of a few short things that we have coming up. Let me pop over here to my handy dandy PowerPoint. We have a VBC magazine. If this is the first you've heard of it, it's just simply because we don't have your address. Please send that to us. We will make sure to get you a copy. This is something we send out for free quarterly. And as you can see, this is the 250th anniversary issue where we're highlighting revolutionary soldiers for this particular magazine. It's a little step away from what we normally do. We like to take all the current stories that we're hearing from our vets and we like to publish them in the magazine. This one is a little more historic. But like I said, if you want to get a copy, please let us know. We'll be happy to send you 1, 10, 50, whatever you like, because if you're willing to hand them out for us, it's a great way for us to advertise what we do here at the Veterans Breakfast Club. We have some programs coming up. Maybe you joined us last Monday where we talked about the upcoming movie Pressure, which highlights the weather decision leading up to D-Day. It was a fascinating conversation last Monday. Please check it out on YouTube. Also, please come join us at the Phoenix Theater in Bridgeville on Saturday, 1:30. I think we already have 62 RSVPs for this, so we kind of want to fill the theater, not only because we're going to screen the film all together, which is a great time, but afterwards, have a discussion with Glenn. Isn't that right, Glenn?
Yeah, exactly. That presentation I made last week was about the reality, the actual history of the process of making that decision. This movie is the dramatized version of that. I went to see it yesterday, in fact, to preview it so I could prepare my remarks. As a movie, if you just sat there and you don't know anything about the subject matter, it's a very good movie. The acting is good. Brendan Fraser, who plays Eisenhower, portrays him pretty well. I think over the top a bit relative to what Eisenhower was really like. But the fellow who plays Group Captain James Stagg is I think a Scotsman himself. What's the
Andrew
actor?
Scott?
Andrew Scott. He except for one thing, he nails the portrayal of James Stagg 100%. The one thing is James Group Captain Scott was 6'4", and this actor is like 5'8".
That's like he has like Tom Cruise syndrome, where Tom
Yeah.
Cruise has to like stand on boxes to look taller than everybody else.
In reality, especially at that time in the 40s, he was a monster of a man in terms of height, and he hovered over Ike, who was only 5'9" or 5'10" himself. In the movie, Brendan Fraser is hovering over Stagg. So, it's terrible knowing the actual history and the truth when you watch movies like this.
Absolutely.
It's terrible.
Andrew Scott is a brilliant actor, and if you don't know much about his career and his work, he does a lot of stage work. Has played Hamlet in London, and if you've ever watched the BBC version of Sherlock, he played Moriarty with just
Yeah.
a wickedness that was so spot on. But yeah, everybody come check it out on Saturday afternoon, and then if you want to make it a VBC day, Saturday night, I'll be at the Washington Wild Things game. VBC is being honored. We're going to have vets there. We have a community suite. I think there's a gentleman, one of our community members, is going to throw out the first pitch. So make it a VBC day if you would like to come down to the Washington Wild Things. Grab your tickets. Every ticket sold to the Washington Wild Things. I could put the link into the chat if you're interested. It's a $10 ticket. $5 goes back to the VBC. And then coming up next week, we have a screening of the Mobile Riverine Force documentary. And then we're going to talk to MRF vets after the screening, as well as the filmmakers, the documentarians. So join us Monday night for that conversation. And then we'll be back here Thursday night, Judgment at Nuremberg, with your host, Glenn.
Yeah. And this is, if you remember, we did a program on Nuremberg with a law professor from not Columbia, one of those other New York law schools. I get them all mixed up, but brilliant guy, John Q. Barrett. And it was very, very good on the history of Nuremberg. This is actually about the play and the movie Judgment at Nuremberg, which portrays the third trial at the series of Nuremberg trials. I've watched the movie again. You know, many of us have watched it over the years. I made a point of watching it again about a month ago. We had this program scheduled for 6 weeks ago, and our presenter actually was in a minor car accident and couldn't make it that night, so we switched up programs. But he's fine now, doing well. He's actually produced and directed the play in community theaters, and it actually is pretty popular in community theaters. So it's a fascinating movie. If you have the chance to watch the movie, it's got Spencer Tracy, a whole host of great stars in it. Marlene Dietrich is in it. So the movie is fascinating. And I think the discussion next week will be great.
So all of these programs are provided for free. You buy your movie ticket, you buy a baseball ticket, but you come to one of our breakfasts at in person here and around Pittsburgh. You come and get a free breakfast. You come on Monday nights, Thursday nights free, get a magazine for free. We do all this by very generous support by not only you, but all of our constituents. And if you would like to become a supporting member, it's $50 per year, or you give whatever you would like to help us continue producing all of these wonderful programs. You can do that at veteransbreakfastclub.org. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to hand it off to Glenn. Thanks, Glenn.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, it's a pleasure to see everybody again. Just in case there's anybody new, if Nick, any of your friends or family jumped on, my name's Glenn Flickinger. I host this program almost every Thursday night, Greatest Generation Live, all things World War II. We've been very, very fortunate this year to interview, 4 or 5 World War II veterans so far this year, which is pretty amazing given the few number of veterans that are out there. Almost all of them over 100. Sean, do you see any of our veterans on tonight, perhaps? Russ Freeberg or Richard Inlow or anybody?
I do not see Russ or Richard with us this evening, but if I see them pop in, I'll certainly let you know.
Okay. What I've been trying to do, we've been doing this program now for 6 years, believe it or not. The last 3 years, almost every Thursday night, is find some different topics. We've talked the Battle of the Bulge and Iwo Jima and Okinawa and Pearl Harbor, numerous times. But there are many, many other fascinating aspects of World War II, like the Nuremberg trials, the Tokyo trials. We had a professor on a month or so ago on the Tokyo trials, if you remember. But there's also battles and campaigns that seem to get somewhat lost with time. And this one, I came across this book, The Battle of Manila, by our guest tonight, Nick Sarantakes. Nick, am I pronouncing that last name anywhere nearly correct?
About 80%.
80%. What's the 100% pronunciation?
Well, in English, it's Sarantakes.
Sarantakes. Okay. Is it Greek? It's Sarantakes, maybe.
Yeah, that's actually kind of close. My dad and my aunts and uncles speak very poor Greek, so I've had my Greek students say, "Oh, what are you trying to say? Stop that! Stop
Sure.
abusing our language."
So,
But that's how we pronounced it, or in the United States.
so
So,
you should try living in Latin America like I did in my younger professional days for about 10 years, various countries in Latin America with the last name Flickinger. It's hilarious how they how they cannot pronounce that name.
mhm.
But anyway, Nick, it's a pleasure to have you on. I've read the book, obviously, and Nick is an excellent writer. Nick is with the Naval War College. Nick, tell us a little bit about your background there at the Naval War College and some of the previous books that you've published.
Okay, I'm. I hope you guys can hear me well.
We're
My
good.
my sound is coming out poorly here, but as long as I'm getting across to you guys. Um, I am a professor of strategy at the U.S. Naval War College. I just got promoted, so a lot of the literature that or the PR material that the press is sending out says I'm an associate, but I finally just got promoted. Um, I am.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. I am a historian. I have a PhD from the University of Southern California in history, an MA from University of Kentucky in history, and a bachelor's degree from the University of Texas in history. I am the son of a 22-year Army veteran. My dad was a retired as lieutenant colonel in the Quartermaster Corps. Uh, and we grew up in Austin, Texas, and that's one of the reasons I went to UT is I was just tired of moving. And there was this great university 30 minutes away. I've been teaching at the Naval War College for the last 18 years, and I teach strategy, which to all what we do is we use historical case studies. We spend a lot of time talking about theory, reading people like Clausewitz, Sun Tzu, etc. And then we spend 2 weeks doing that, looking at Mao on irregular war, Admiral Mahan on naval war, Sir Julian Corbett on other type studies, starting with the Peloponnesian Wars, then skipping 2,000 years going to Napoleon, and then depending on what year it is, we may or may not have Bismarck, World War I, Russo-Japanese War, World War II. So it's a hop, skip, and a jump through time. And what we're doing is, okay, we've got all these theories. How do they look when you actually start banging heads and sticking people with the pointy end of the stick? And sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't work, and sometimes people make no bad decision and still they lose. So that's what I've been doing for the past few years. In addition to that, I am an angry, bitter, disillusioned Houston Oilers fan. So I lived across the street from the legendary Earl Campbell, and he even said hello to me once. So anyway, for some of you who remember the 70s. So
We remember the
that's kind of
Steelers.
me in a nutshell.
We remember the Steelers beating up on the Oilers, is what we remember, Nick.
Yeah, I remember. I remember. Slightly differently.
Well, Nick, if we could pause a second, you're breaking up a little bit on us. I don't know, Sean, is there anything
Okay.
we can do on our end?
It's going to be probably up to his Wi-Fi where he's staying. So it might come in shoddy a bit, but we'll keep an eye on it. If you fully cut out, we might ask you to just restate something. But
Okay.
yeah, your internet's probably a little slow, Nick. So we'll do our best.
Okay. Are you hearing us still, Nick? Okay.
Yes, I am.
So let's move on, Nick. You've written 7 books. What led you to this book? It's a fascinating book. I don't necessarily see it as a naval book. So why the land battle of the Philippines versus a naval battle? Hmm. We're having problems.
We'll try with
That's
no
an interesting
video.
question, and actually one I get a fair amount. Yeah. Um, well, one of the things is the Naval War College does not teach just naval history. We do everything. And this is also a case of it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Basically, the editor for the project, a gentleman by the name of Tim Bent, came to me and basically asked me if I would do this. And what's interesting about this is something that I had been thinking about doing. I am not actually a military historian. I'm trained as a historian of U.S. diplomatic history. And I've written on some topics where diplomacy and military affairs collide, and that's what we call strategy. And I'd always been thinking, what happens if I do a honest to God, legitimate battle history? And Oxford University Press contacted me. They said, we want to do a book on this. This is the biggest battle. This is the biggest urban battle in the history of the United States Army. It's 250-year history. And I was really interested in it. I had been wanting to do this. It was going to be a challenge for me. It's not something I normally do. And I said, yes, I will do that. And I thought there would be two difficult things, and that is indeed what happened. Those turned out to be the problems. And those two problems were the quality of maps. One of the interesting things is with all this communications technology, the internet and everything, map making has become really poor. We are allowing everything to be digitized, and that does not translate well into published books. So that turned out to be a real problem. And there are plenty of military maps out there with excruciating detail. In fact, I found a huge wall map that I could put on my wall, and I could tell you how many pillboxes were on Taft Avenue between Texas Street and Pennsylvania Street. But I didn't think people needed to know that there were 7 between those streets. But that was a problem. And then the other problem was getting access or getting sources from the other side. Everyone thinks that the Japanese stood to the last man and died, and that's not that wrong of an interpretation. But in the Battle of Manila, a lot of the defenders get out. About 15 to 25% of the defenders get out of the city, and none of them write memoirs. Absolutely none of them, because this is not a battle you want to be proud of if you're Japanese. So how do you get access to the other side? I read Japanese. I don't read it well, but I do read it. And it turned out there were 2 ways to get around this. First, the Americans take about 400 prisoners of war during the battle. That's in addition to the roughly 4,000 or 5,000 guys who escape. And they were all debriefed. And I kept telling myself, figure out new ways to interpret this, figure out how to use this information. Because if you had, there would be a debrief on each prisoner, which would be about 2 pages long, generally 2 pages long. There was one that was 17 pages long. But that turned out to be useful information. And then the military intelligence units were taking documents off dead bodies and translating them. So those became sources. So I was looking at U.S. Army records, but I was looking at intelligence detachment records and the translations and debriefings. So that was one thing. Another thing is I went and got the official Japanese histories, or the official Japanese history of the battle. And the Japanese official history isn't an official history the way most Americans would understand that term. It's basically a collection of documents with maybe a sentence in between saying, General Yamamoto or General Yamaguchi wrote this memo, and then there's the memo, and then a sentence would say, and Admiral Inoue responded with this letter, and then there's the letter. So it's mostly a collection of documents. And my Japanese, most of this stuff was written in an old form of Japanese. It's kind of equivalent to Elizabethan English. And I spent a lot of time looking at this going, why the hell are they saying it this way? You don't need to use four nouns to make the point that this is a battle, but they did. So I fortunately could say, okay, this is a telegram, this is a letter, and I had Japanese students, one in particular, a captain in the Japanese Naval Defense Force, and I said, can you tell me what this is? And he sat down and basically said, boom, 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 boom. So I said, awesome, thank you. So it was by no means an extensive drive through the Japanese official histories, but I got to the key points and I learned some interesting things. So those were the two big challenges to writing this book. They were things I expected, and there certainly is more you could do on the Japanese side, but I'm basically the first author who's writing in English who's able to tell you the Japanese side of the story, or has given you more of the Japanese side of the story. A couple other people have written a little on the Japanese side, but
I would volunteer that Nick's book is, there was a term you used for it. I forget what it was, Nick, in the preface. It's not just about the commanders. It's not just about the American side. It's not just about the Japanese side. It includes all facets of the battle, including the Filipino side and including the privates and the sergeants and the captains and so forth. So what was the term, Nick, for that kind of writing style?
I called it the whole of Army approach. I don't know if the idea is unique to me. I think I came up with the term on my own. Maybe someone else has used it, but basically I was saying battle histories, we always talk about the main point of contact where people are shooting at people, throwing grenades, all that sort of stuff. And that's important. Because if you're not talking about that, then excuse me, then you're really not understanding the battle. But I also kept wondering, what's happening to the medical units? What's happening to the military police? What's happening to the signal corps? What are they doing? And given the Battle of Manila, the short answer is they're trying to do their job, support the guys in the infantry and the artillery, and they're also getting shot at. So they're essentially reserve infantry. So it was a dangerous place because Japanese defenders got isolated and they got bypassed, and people didn't know they were there, and they're suddenly shooting at guys in the quartermaster corps, and they're like, I'm supposed to be a rear echelon dude. What's going on here?
Yeah. But Nick, you prepared a very nice set of photos and maps for us. Why don't I put that up and we'll start charging through that in order to tell the actual story of the battle. Nick, we're hearing you very clear. We lost your picture. And Sean, I'm thinking that maybe is better because the width of the band is less. We're just hearing you, Nick. Are you seeing the screen, Nick, with all of our members on it?
Yes, I'm seeing the screen.
Okay, great. I'll put up the share for the PowerPoint, Nick, and you just tell me when you want me to advance the slide, okay?
Sounds good.
Some of what is in your presentation you just covered. So we don't need to maybe go into repeat that. Are you seeing this okay, Nick?
Yes.
And let me get the play from the start.
Okay. What you're looking at is the cover, and these are the unit insignia of all the units that fight in the Battle of Manila, starting with the 1st Cavalry Division, the 11th Airborne, which just got reactivated about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. 1st Cavalry Division has been an active unit in the U.S. Army ever since, basically. The red dot is the 37th Infantry Division, which was basically the Ohio National Guard. The next one, the asterisk, that's the 14th Corps, which was basically the main force. All those divisions were basically under the command of the Corps commander. And then you have the 6th U.S. Army, which briefly fights in the battle. And then the red octagon is the 8th U.S. Army, which is also still an active duty unit. It's been stationed in Korea since the Korean War.
And what's fascinating about this, we seem to be, whoops, I'm sorry, I just jumped a little too quick. I don't know why I did that.
I think it's still on automatic advance, so I thought I turned that off. If you could probably go back and you have the slides, if you could turn that off.
Okay. I'm not quite sure how to do that. Sean, you might have to help me with that if that becomes a problem. Maybe I can try to manage it a little more closely.
Okay, when I said it all depends on who you know, who knows you, not who you know. This is a slide. Tim Bent was my editor, and he was recommended. I was recommended to him by Tammy Biddle, who I have been in the same room with several times, but I've never actually talked to her. So she said, this is the guy you want, and I was like, wow, okay. And she I think she just retired from the Army War College. So, okay, the challenges pretty much, you're going to have to turn off that timer.
Okay. Sean, you're going to have to show me how to do that. Audience, I'm sorry, but I'm not familiar with that function on PowerPoint, Sean.
That I'm not familiar with either. There's a timer on there. Let me take a look at mine. Because it's doing an autoplay, right?
Yeah, it's automatically advancing, and I believe it's on transitions. So you need to basically put it on mouse click.
Okay, I see it. Glenn?
Yeah, I have to get to my PowerPoint. I'm stuck on the full screen, as you can. You're not seeing it, but
if it's on full screen, press exit or escape on your keypad.
Yeah, I am, and it's nothing happening. There we go. Okay.
Okay, so you see the menu options up top?
Yep.
Okay, click on transitions.
Yep.
And then you'll see on the right side, you should see on mouse click, and it might not be checked. You can check that.
It is checked now.
Okay, and then apply to all on the right. And then you should be good to go back to slideshow and play from current.
Okay,
let me give it a shot before I share the screen.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience here.
Yes, thank you. And I apologize. I'm talking to you from the Garden Wyndham in Norfolk, Virginia, where we're doing research on my next book, which is focuses on General Douglas MacArthur.
It's not focused on jet noise?
Nope. So I apologize. I am dealing with all the best Wi-Fi that a 50-year-old hotel will give me.
For any of you who have lived or been down around Oceania, I lived down there for a time, and the jets flying over was consistent all day, every day. You just got used to it.
Yes.
So I'm still dealing with this. I turned off the on mouse click. Well, which now it's back on.
You want it on. You want it on mouse click.
Yeah, you want to check that box.
You don't want it on the timer, which should be the button underneath mouse click.
So I just unclick that and apply to all. Let me try it again.
I believe that should work. And I don't want to pee in your cornflakes here, Nick, but Greg Yost put in the chat here that 2 years running, the Steelers and Oilers split the regular season games. Then the Steelers would win the AFC Championship against the Oilers. Early and mid 70s, the two best teams were the Raiders and the Steelers. Late 70s, it was the Steelers and Oilers. And then the Steelers, won 4 Super Bowls in the 70s.
Yeah, well, Earl Campbell is in a wheelchair now because of he basically carried 45 guys on his back. So,
well, one of those was Mean Joe Green all the time. So I think I've solved this. So
okay.
let me bring it back up now to everybody.
What I meant by that is it was basically Earl Campbell versus the Steelers. It wasn't the Oilers. There were
yeah.
All right, there you go.
Okay.
Play from current, or where you were at.
Play from current would be best.
There we
Yeah.
go. Okay.
All right. This just gets to what I was talking about earlier. Uh, these are basically the only two books that have been published in Japanese on the Battle of Manila. And the first, the one that basically is white, basically it's the title of it is the Battle of Manila. And that's actually an official Department of Defense, Ministry of Defense study, official history. And what's interesting is to go look at the footnotes. Most of the footnotes are actually to the Army Green, the Army of U.S. Army official history in the Green Book series. And then the green book cover, that's basically, that says Japanese. That's Japanese for the Manila Naval Maritime Defense Force. So, and you can basically see the first three characters in both book titles are the same. That's the katakana for Manila. So that just gets to the problem that I was facing is that you don't have a whole lot of Japanese sources. So Glenn, if you could go to the next slide. Okay, this gets to one of the other things I talked about, maps. There are a lot of maps and a lot of great detail. That doesn't translate well into a book. You sometimes need that detail. So this is a map I took. I forget where I grabbed it from, but I was telling my map maker, these are the things I need on it. I was using multicolored pens. We were doing this during the pandemic, which made that more difficult. So I'd have to scan these things and email them to them. And then at one point I just said, give me your regular postal mailing address. And I put things in the mail. It took a while to get there because the mail service wasn't working or was moving slower than normal during that time. It was working, it was moving slower. So that's kind of the raw source material for a map, and then what ended up in the book. So if we go to the next slide. One of the things I didn't expect.
The book is rich with some very good maps, lots of great maps.
Thank you. Thank you. It took a lot of work. One of the things I didn't expect is that someone else would write a book on the battle. I'm like, it's been 70 years. No one's written on this. And then James Scott wrote a book. It's a very different book than what I wrote. And I was, everyone was like, uh-oh, what do we do here? And he's got a very different take on the battle. So if you enjoy my book, then you should read his. But you should buy mine first and buy about 4 or 5 copies of mine and give them out as Christmas gifts, Father's Day's gifts, birthday gifts. It's mine's really great. It'll help cure athlete's foot and a lot of other things. Okay, a little description of the book. There are 21 chapters looking at the strategic level, the operational level. There are also 2 chapters basically that are behind the front lines. So you have the main point of contact, people shooting at each other. And then what is it like to be in the Japanese side? And what's it like to be in the US side? And the answer is it's a lot better to be in the US side. And then there's a chapter on what happens after the battle. And that kind of takes it from March of 45 to roughly August of 45. What are some of the cool things? Well, I did research in a lot of different archives in the United States. I also went to Manila and did research there. I got the personal papers of most of the commanding generals. I got 2 of the 3 division commanders, the corps commander, papers of the 2 field armies, and of course, Douglas MacArthur, the theater commander. One of the interesting things, and I'm not the person who pushed this, but it certainly was true for Manila, is there's an argument that regardless of what battle it is, the media of that day and age is going to have a significant impact on the course of the battle. And I studied that, and long story made short, it was very true. MacArthur was trying to manipulate the media, and it's a complex story, but basically at first, we've liberated Manila, and it's this huge front page banner headline news in the United States. And then the battle goes on for a month, and MacArthur is kind of like, nothing to see here. Don't look at the man behind, moving on. And a lot of press releases are released or communiques that say, Mop-up operations continue. Savage clearing operations in Manila, blah, 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 which I guess at the kind of 50,000 foot level is true, but there are a lot of people fighting and dying in Manila who didn't know the battle, were kind of surprised to learn that the battle was over. The official histories, I talked about that. Military intelligence documents, I talked about that. Personal papers of individual soldiers. There was a comment there in the chat. MacArthur had a tendency to do this, and it actually infuriated people. He had the tendency being to announce prematurely. That's an interesting approach. I actually think he did it for a reason, but in this case, it blew up in his face. I also found it kind of blew up in his face. I found personal papers of individual soldiers. So when Glenn talked about, I'm trying to do, the tactical level, the operational level, the strategic level. And there were some famous people who fought there. Two of the more famous ones would be Rod Serling, the actor / writer, and who was most famous for being the on-air host of The Twilight Zone, and then Norman Mailer, the novelist of the 60s and 70s. Well, actually, the 40s through the 70s. Actually, I guess he wrote into the 80s. Anyway.
And these were young men at the time.
Yes, they were. So, all right. Next slide, please.
Well, I'm actually going to stop for a second.
All right.
Mind. And
sure.
Before we get into the next slide, if I can do this, if I can manipulate my computer correctly. So what I thought we'd do, Nick, which is not in your presentation, and I'm really having trouble getting this done, but I will eventually get there if you'll give me a minute or two. I don't know why I can't take down my PowerPoint, Sean. You need to tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Might be running slow on your computer.
I wanted to put up a map of the Philippines because I didn't want to assume that everybody knew the geography involved. But Nick, before the Battle of Luzon, give us a little primer on MacArthur's beginning the invasion of the Philippines for Luzon.
Okay, well, Luzon is the big island. Everyone knew that the United States was going to invade Luzon. A lot of fighting is done on Leyte, which is the #2 island in the archipelago. And that, of course, leads to the naval battle, the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which is really about 4 naval battles. And then everyone expects that MacArthur is going to invade from Leyte to Luzon, which is indeed what happens. But what is interesting is Leyte is to the south of Luzon. Luzon also is the northernmost big island in the Philippines. And all the Japanese defenses were built facing south, basically expecting an invasion to come from Leyte. And MacArthur basically sails around sails around Luzon. He goes basically to the west of the island, goes up, and then comes down and invades from the north. And he goes into Lingayen Gulf, which is actually a resort town. And basically they drive through central Luzon and head towards Manila. One of the interesting things is most of the Japanese, there are basically 3 concentrations of Japanese defenders on Luzon. The biggest group is under General Yamashita, which is up there in the northeast, and they're actually going to be fighting until the surrender on the Missouri. So that the battle for Luzon only ends when the war ends. There's another major force that is basically to the east of Manila, and then there's the Manila Naval Defense Force, which was not really what it was originally planned to be. But so 2 of those 3 centers of resistance are destroyed. Manila is a huge city in 1945, about 1 million people. And what makes it interesting, or what makes it important, is it is the political capital, it's the financial capital, it's the population center, and it is the transportation center of the Philippines. So it's key real estate. We all know the rule of the prime rule in real estate: location, location, location. That means some pieces of real estate are more valuable than others. Manila, for the U.S. Army, was the only modern port on the west side of the Pacific, and they needed it to invade Japan. And one of the consequences of how the battle was fought is that all the port facilities, all the dock facilities are destroyed during the battle. There's a huge fire. U.S. artillery tears it up. And the Japanese also did an incredibly good job of sinking hulks in Manila Bay that were, according to the Navy one-star who was put in charge of basically getting it repaired, put in the exact right spot. So guys could only work on the ships for about 4 hours a day before sunlight and wind and tide patterns got in the way. So they were able to get a ship in there within about a month, but that was a stunt. For all practical purposes, the port of Manila was never fully repaired while the war was going on.
If I could just make a couple of points to the audience about the geography. So the Lingayen Gulf is here, as everybody's seeing. Sean is seeing me pointed out here.
Yes.
It's also in 1941, early 42, where the Japanese invaded the Philippines.
Yes, it is.
And then, in fact, did the same thing that MacArthur does in 1945, invades through Lingayen Gulf and comes south down through the center, the relatively flat terrain of central Luzon. Also, you'll see here in a little bit, as Nick explains the battle, the 11th Airborne evades from the south and goes north this way. And it is just fascinating when you think about the Battle of Luzon. It basically took place in about 1/3 of the territory. As Nick said, the rest of the Japanese are up here in the mountains, and they hang out there for the rest of the war, and even long after the war, right? Wasn't the last person, the last Japanese soldier to surrender? Wasn't that like in the 70s from somewhere in the Philippines?
Yes, he was in the Philippines. I don't believe he was on Luzon. But yes, he surrenders in like 71, 72, and he goes back to Japan and becomes a huge hero for all sorts of reasons. But and then apparently has a very successful life. I mean, he's 50 when he surrenders. So I'm in my 50s. So it's good news for me that I can still have a successful life.
You just need to surrender, Nick.
There you go.
Okay, let me put the PowerPoint back up. But I just thought it'd be useful for everybody to get a feel for the geography involved.
As we wait for the slides to go back up, we had complete and total air superiority. In fact, it was one of the things that was driving home the message to the foot soldiers on the Japanese side that the battle was over, that they had lost. So, and that's a product of just, we destroy their aviation in 43 and 44.
And so true. I'm reading through the Battle of Cassino in central Italy right now in another book for our upcoming trip. And so true. American air power around the world eventually by 43 and 44 wins the day. It just makes it tremendously easier for the ground forces. Okay, so let me get this going again, Nick, for you. And I'll let you take over again with now the fascinating personalities involved at the command level.
Okay, what you're looking at are pictures of a bunch of the commanding generals. Obviously, we all know who the guy in the center is. The guy standing next to him is Major General Vern Mudge, who is the division commander of the 1st Cavalry Division. Mudge is interesting. He actually graduated from the University of Florida, and only then did he get an appointment to West Point. So he goes to West Point as basically a 22-year-old individual, and basically goes to college twice. He spends his entire career in the cavalry. He does a lot of stupid things during the battle. He basically at one point is a platoon sergeant. He's doing the work of a platoon lieutenant. And eventually this catches up with him about 2 weeks into March. He's actually so close to the Japanese front lines. Japanese soldier throws a grenade. It bounces off his chest. It hooks onto his belt where his pistol is, and then explodes and basically tears apart his hip and tears open a rather large wound in his abdomen. Long story made short, his Army career is over, and he will eventually die from those wounds about 10 years later, complications of those wounds. So a very aggressive commander, but also one who was perhaps too aggressive. The gentleman to the left, that's Robert Beitler. He's the division commander of the 37th Infantry Division. The 37th was a National Guard unit, and what's interesting about this, Beitler is the only National Guard officer who retains command of his division throughout the war. So, and when I looked at their stuff, I was really impressed. I mean, you hear all this stuff about weekend soldiers and they're not as good as the regulars, blah, blah, blah. The 37th Infantry Division was incredible. And one of the things I noticed is they had a lower disease rate than any other division on Luzon. Or excuse me, not on Luzon, but in the 14th Corps. And that had to do with discipline. And of course, venereal disease rates skyrocket once soldiers get to Luzon. They go up in the 37th Infantry Division, but not near as big as in some of the others. And that has a lot to do with the fact that when you're on an isolated island in the middle of the Pacific, there's not a whole lot of places to go to have sex where you can catch venereal diseases. And then when you're in a island with 11 million people, well, there are lots of opportunities to do that. The gentleman at the bottom underneath Beitler is Oscar Griswold, who is the commander of the 14th Corps. And then the other guy, if we could go back, that's Joe Swing, who is the commander of the 11th Airborne Division. And he actually will end up running the Immigration and Naturalization Service under Eisenhower in the 50s. He's a West Point classmate of Eisenhower's. And Ike says, do this job for me. And he says, sure. Okay. Walter Kruger. He is the commanding general of the 8th Army. Got on the cover of Time magazine about a month after the battle. And what's interesting about him, there are a lot of interesting things about him. He spent 10 years teaching where I teach at the Naval War College. So he's Mr. Jointness. And he really understands how to work with the Navy and the Air Force. The other two interesting things about him is that he is the first 4-star in the history of the U.S. Army to start off his career as an enlisted soldier. So I'm sure there have been a couple since then, but he is the first guy to do that. He gets his 4th star about a month after the battle is over, so April of 45. And then he is also the first general who is not, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. He is the first 4-star who is a naturalized U.S. citizen. So he's born outside the United States. His family immigrates from Germany when he's 5 years old. And one of the things he did at the Naval War College is he translated a bunch of naval histories from German to English histories on this First World War. So, and then there was a question in the chat about Beitler. Why does he have the CIB? Well, he's not supposed to, and he actually got in trouble for that. He put that on his uniform. He stays on active duty throughout the second half of the 40s, and someone says, General, what the hell are you doing? That's not for you. And he gets a little letter of reprimand, and he's forced to take that off. So he was wearing the CIB. The CIB is basically for colonels and below. Generals don't get it. Eichelberger in the middle, commander of 8th Army. And what's interesting about these two Army commanders is they hated each other's guts. And Eichelberger basically says, I will never work with that guy again. Kruger, a lot of people didn't like Kruger. Apparently he could be a really hard ass. Now, one of the interesting things that I discovered during this process is MacArthur plays his subordinates off one another. And the fact that these two don't like each other, he uses that to kind of prod them. It's kind of like military capitalism, let's see what the competitive market gets us. So both guys, well, Kruger basically was very wary. It's like, where the hell are the Japanese? Where are the Japanese? He doesn't want to open up gaps between his units. MacArthur tells him, hey, that's fine. We got air cover. Go for it. And Kruger's like, no, I'm going to go. And then he brings in Eichelberger, and actually the 11th Airborne under him initially invades from the south. They make really rapid progress until they bounce against Japanese defensive lines just outside southern Manila. And the other interesting thing about this is everything that MacArthur does in 1945, he does in 1950 in Korea. So what happens in Korea isn't all that new, because you have gaps opening up supposedly it's going to be covered by air power. You have divided command. He's playing one person off the other. It's all the same stuff. And the Japanese don't have the initiative or the willingness or the resources to take advantage of these opportunities, whereas the Chinese do. So MacArthur kind of had a pattern to command or operations: speed, surprise, and maneuver. You see that in Luzon, you see that in Korea, and it works until someone figures out how to neutralize it. The last person is Richard Sutherland. This is MacArthur's chief of staff and his deputy commander, and he's absent during much of the Battle of Manila because he just is having an affair with an Australian woman. She was married, he was married, but he missed her, so he gets in a plane and goes back to Australia, and everyone's like, does he know that we got a battle going on here? So his absence creates enormous problems in MacArthur's headquarters. MacArthur's headquarters are about an hour to the north of where Manila is, about 60 miles. So there are some problems there. In fact, for about a week, the headquarters doesn't really understand that there's a battle going on, and they're actually spending time planning a victory parade. And people come back, actually several reporters who come back and say, guys, have you been there? Do you understand what the hell is going on? So there's some disconnect, and a lot of that's because Sutherland isn't there.
Isn't part of it also, Nick, that when the Japanese invaded the Philippines, MacArthur was in Manila, in his headquarters in Manila, and he declared Manila an open city. And he thought the Japanese would do the same.
Yeah, he certainly does expect that. And other people say why he expected them to suddenly act that way. I mean, where has MacArthur been for the last 2.5 years? I mean, so MacArthur was trying to protect, or assumed that Manila would be safe. There are some psychological reasons for that. I'm not a psychologist. I don't really get into that other than to say it was wishful thinking.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things is to prod Kruger. He orders the 1st Cavalry to rapidly head south. And this is the flying column. And as you can see, the name is a little more glamorous than what actually happens. One of the problems is fording rivers. And turns out a lot of these bridges were blown up in 1941, 42 by us to slow down the Japanese. And over the last 3 years, the Japanese haven't done anything to replace them. And one of the things you're seeing is if you drive into the river, it basically will stall out the engines on the Jeeps. And what they figured out is, let's basically create a chain link that we can pull across. So the tanks would drive across the river. Their engines were high enough they wouldn't stall out. The Jeeps would, so they pull the Jeeps across the river, and then they basically wait for about an hour or so for all the water to evaporate, and so the engines could start up again. One of the goals to get into, or one of the things to seize in Manila, was the University of Santo Tomas, which is still there. This is a really old college in Manila, established by the Spanish. But what makes it important in 1945 is this is where all civilians are being held. So there are a great number of American citizens, a lot of other foreigners of countries that are at war with the at war with Japan, and they're basically interned at the university, which is a polite way of saying they're in a prisoner of war camp, although technically they're not prisoners. So, but
how many civilians were in this camp?
I believe the number that's popping into my head is about 4,000. And one of the things is by 1945, Manila is in the early stages of a famine. And that has to do completely with the breakdown of the Filipino economy because of Japanese mismanagement. And the Japanese were not particularly concerned about feeding enemy civilians. So people are dying in the camp because they can't eat. So
If you've seen Ken Burns's documentary from a couple decades ago, The War, there's some really compelling stories about the civilians interned at San Tomas.
yeah,
And in Nick's book, there's some really heart-rending stories about some of those prisoners being freed by their own relatives as the military comes in.
yeah, there are one or two stories like that. One guy rescues his college girlfriend. So there's some interesting things there. What's worth pointing out, the Santo Tomas is still there. You're looking at the main building. That's the main building. It's still there. Although a lot of the area behind the university is now skyscrapers. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought I had a slide. This is Santo Tomas today. So you can see there are a lot of skyscrapers there.
What's Manila's population today? Like 12 million, 15 million?
That I can't tell you. 1945, it's about 1.1900, depending on what you're counting.
I'm going to guess it's at least 15 million, if not 20. I mean, these Asian cities have just multiplied so dramatically in the last 50 years.
Okay, there's an amazing amount of literature on the liberation of Santo Tomas. In fact, a lot of memoirs, academic studies, blah, blah, blah. It's the one part of the Manila story that's overdone. And for what it's worth, this tank is commanded by Robert E. Lee IV, who is the Civil War general's great grandson.
Wow, I didn't catch that. That's fascinating. What is be interesting to look up any of his sons.
They are the general has descendants, but his sons had a lot of daughters, and his grandsons had a lot of daughters. There is a Robert E. Lee, the fifth or sixth, but he's like the only male direct descendant. So I actually, it's amazing the trivial things you learn when you become a historian. I talked about media coverage. These are copies of editorial cartoons, Los Angeles Times, big banner headline, front page editorial cartoon. The Chicago Daily Times, which is now the modern forerunner of the Chicago Sun-Times. Basically, it was a tabloid. I believe the Sun-Times is a tabloid to this day, but you can see how big and bold the headlines are. And then MacArthur is basically, nothing to look at. Go away. There's no battle going on here. Go, go. And a lot of reporters are kind of stuck. It's like, there are a lot of people getting killed here. And these mop-up operations aren't exactly, small. So, and a lot of reporters are held to account by their professional colleagues when they come back. It's like, what the hell were you doing? And there's all sorts, people are blaming MacArthur, people saying, well, at the time it was correct, blah. So,
but this is MacArthur's MO: manipulate the press, make himself look as favorable as possible in the press. Am I overstating that?
No, and there are reasons to do this because they haven't made a decision who's going to command the invasion of Japan. So there's concern about that. So this is the crossing of the Pasig River. This is right by the official residence of the president of the Filipino Republic. The first salt wave gets across without much of opposition. Second one takes a lot of machine guns, and MacArthur's basically on the other side of the river, which is not that big, 200, 300 yards wide. So he gets pretty close to the front lines. not like Vernon Mudge. Okay, I was really flabbergasted when I saw this photograph. What they're doing is they're putting a helmet on a stick and they're sticking it out around the corner. And the Japanese defenders had so little infantry training, that's all that it took to bait them. They'd fire at this, and then that would tell them where they were, and they'd maneuver. And these guys had so little training. It was basically, here's a rifle, here's how you load it, pull the trigger. And they didn't maneuver. They just stayed until they got killed, which is pretty much what happened.
The Japanese that were defending the city were, by and large, fairly untrained troops, not crack Japanese troops.
Yeah, some people call them, elite Japanese Marines. No, absolutely not. What you have are basically guys who are sailors who are, were working on shore units, who may have been, supply sailors, or guys whose ship got sank, or in several cases, Japanese businessmen who happened to be in Manila and who got drafted because they were Japanese. And here's like the 42-year-old, ensign who's basically, I don't intend to die for, the Bushido Code. What are you talking about? I'm a lawyer. So those were actually some of the first guys to surrender. So, yeah. Now, one of the interesting things about urban battle that I didn't understand when I started this project out is it's not just you simply marching down a street and shooting and, you can tell where you are. Urban battle changes the terrain of a city quite dramatically. And this photo captures it. One of the things that happens is you're dropping ordnance, shells are exploding, they're ripping up sidewalks, they're ripping up streets. So they're kicking up cement dust and dirt. So this is a machine gun crew that's shooting at Japanese, but you can't see the Japanese because of all that dust in the air. So the fog of war is a real thing. Another thing that happens is there's fires, you have artillery shells that are blowing up buildings, and suddenly, for lack of a better way of putting it, these buildings melt. They collapse. And they collapse on streets. Street signs are shot off. So suddenly you're marching down the street, and then there's all this rubble because the building that's supposed to be to the left is now basically on top of that street. So knowing where you are is not an easy thing, even in some cases, even if you're a native of the city. And there are a lot of people who are like going, oh my God, just look what happened.
And the use of U.S. artillery was just massive.
Yes.
But there were a couple of times, as I recall in the book, in the story, where MacArthur called off the artillery for a little bit because he was afraid of destroying the city.
That certainly is the case. He is reluctant to authorize it. He also will not allow air operations against the city because he doesn't want them dropping ordnance or bombs, and even tactical air at this point in time is not that precise. So,
yeah, it's worth mentioning that in MacArthur's life, this is as close to a hometown as he ever had.
Yeah, yeah, and in fact, he left most of his stuff, most of his personal belongings in the Manila hotel. And for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part, the Japanese respected him as an officer and a gentleman. So his stuff is still there. And then the Manila hotel gets blown up, and he can literally see almost all his personal belongings, his father's library, his father's Medal of Honor just burning. And this has some devastating personal effect on him. He lost a lot of his stuff. Any of you who've had a house fire know it's devastating, even though you're losing physical stuff. This is an illustration that was commissioned by the Ohio National Guard. It does not appear in the book, but it does kind of get at how close this is. And when I talked about buildings collapsing, there you go.
Yeah, hand-to-hand fighting almost, right?
In some cases, yes. Okay, people win the Medal of Honor, and these are 4 people who win the Medal of Honor. Sergeant Rodriguez is the only one who lives to survive or survives the battle. He and John Reese, who was there next to him in the upper left, basically almost wipe out the Japanese defenders at the railroad station. It's a building that's made out of marble and cement, so it stands up very well to artillery shells, and they basically just close in and they stay there until they run out of ammunition. Then they retreat. Reese is killed in the process. Rodriguez will actually, I'm trying to remember, he wins the Silver Star or the Army Distinguished Service Cross like 2 weeks later for a separate action. So, and then you have Lieutenant Valle, who basically jumps on a grenade that he dropped, and he basically saves his men. And then you have Private Perez, who basically is kind of a one-man demolition crew at Fort McKinley, kills about 30 Japanese defenders, and Fort McKinley basically looks like Verdun from World War I. So he's jumping out of trenches, charging into pillboxes. I mean, it would actually almost strike you as being over the top if Hollywood tried to make it. You'd go, oh, that doesn't happen. Well, it did. He knows he's getting the Medal of Honor, but he is killed about a month after the battle, and he never actually gets the medal while he's alive. Okay, the General Post Office. One of the interesting things about the city of Manila is for the 50 years that the Americans run it, we basically make it look like Washington with neoclassical architecture. So all the stuff looks like, you know, Rome and ancient Greece. The General Post Office falls in one day, mainly because the Japanese don't know how to defend it. This should have held out for at least 2 weeks. Could you go back to that slide, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was fussing with something else. Okay.
Okay. The General Post Office, what you're looking at, the back of it, what you can't see is basically the Pasig River. So you can't attack from the back. And it's in a park, which in 1945 has been burned off. There is nothing there for about 75 yards. It's just flat, open ground with nowhere to hide. And you see it a little in the upper picture, this is actually, you got to climb up stairs or steps. This is actually elevated. So the Japanese defenders have perfect line of sight. And you can tell the other picture shows guys from 37th Infantry Division holding the city or holding the post office. They take it in a day because the Japanese defenders don't know what the hell they're doing.
And this is towards the end of the
Yes.
Battle of Manila, right?
Yes.
Let me take the PowerPoint down for a few minutes and see if we can't answer any questions that are out there. But the Battle of Manila lasts about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, as I recall.
It's essentially a month-long battle.
Month-long.
Now, with that said, the last week is trying to take a small piece of real estate, basically a park. So it's only, I'm trying to think, it's the equivalent of about 5 or 6 football fields. So it's not a whole lot. The capture of the walled city is important. The capture of the post office is important. So by about the middle of the third week, the battle is over. Most of the city is captured in 2.5 weeks, but not all of it. So that's one of the reasons why I had a chapter on what's it like to be in the behind the lines or in the Japanese lines. What's it like to be in the American lines? And as I said, a very different experience.
Yeah, yeah. In the chat, which I've just begun to be able to look at, Brad asked a very good question since he's a military man, a retired lieutenant colonel in the Marines. If we could unmute Brad, let you ask the question, Brad.
Sure. 1 sec. Let me find Brad.
I got it.
Yeah, I think we probably answered this in a roundabout way, but it looked like the battle was proceeding from north to south to rid the island of the Japanese occupation. But what was the specific strategic objective for the Battle of Manila?
Well, it's a lot political, but there's also a very significant need for port facilities. That's one of the reasons why you take Okinawa. And one of the things that's interesting about this is, given the level of devastation, you've actually turned Manila into a liability. And given the political nature of the relationship with the Philippines, the fact that we're the good guys, that we're giving them the independence. Oh, and by the way, they're also supplying 500,000 guys, and that's a whole different story that we're going to need to invade Japan. You can't just ignore Manila. So it becomes a huge liability that actually, for a while, overwhelms the U.S. Army. One of the few things that goes right in this sense is the Army manages to capture the water supply for the city before the Japanese can destroy it. And if you don't have running water, if you don't have the ability to flush sewage, if you don't have the ability to drink clean water, you're going to have you're going to have a public health crisis like none other. So that works. Now, all this other stuff, civic government, the police force, you've got, a few thousand bodies. They're stinking up the place. You got to bury them very quickly. There are all sorts of problems. So Manila becomes a liability. And I don't know if we don't have enough from the Japanese side. I don't think that was what they were intending to do, but it sure does end up working to their advantage.
Good, thank you.
Jeffrey Foss asked a question in the chat as well. I've asked you to unmute. Jeff, could you unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, I was wondering if not for MacArthur insisting I shall return, could we have just bypassed the Philippines and gone straight to Okinawa or straight to Kyushu in the invasion of Japan? Did we really need to take the Philippines strategically?
That's a good question. And it's something I've really wrestled with during the writing phase. And I had a teaching partner who said the Philippines was an entire mistake. I spent a lot of time thinking about that, and it really bothered me, because one of the things is, when you write a book, you're spending a lot of time reading these reports, these documents, and you're reading about atrocities, and it's just something that's stuck in your head. So you're writing this report, and it's like, oh my gosh, look what they did. And they're doing this to everyone. And it's just, at one point, I was prepared to give up the book because I was just so sick to my stomach on a daily basis. And the press gave me an advance, which was not life-altering money, but it was just enough that I couldn't give it back. So I stuck with it. But that gets off the topic. But it does tell you what I was wrestling with. Is it needed? Short answer, yes. Okinawa is not big enough to stage an invasion of Kyushu. You need Luzon. They are planning to put Air Force assets in Luzon. You need the port facilities. You need the manpower. There are also political and diplomatic issues. You can't leave the Philippines behind. One of the things that turns out is the Japanese are so bad at running the Philippines that it basically gives us a pass for the next 4 decades, because a lot of people could look at how Luzon, and particularly Manila, was liberated and say, the Americans kind of did this on the cheap. But given the bad behavior of the Japanese, and no one really questions that. So, but you can't leave them simply behind. And oh, by the way, the famine has started, and that's because of Japanese mismanagement. You need to get food there. You need to start reviving the economy. All these things need to happen if you're going to save the Philippines. And so, yes, you need to be there. And if you don't, people have said, well, why not just go around Manila? And the answer is, that only looks like a good move given what happens. And no one knows that's going to happen a month before the battle or the day the battle starts. You don't know that they're going to destroy this city. So the reasons to avoid it don't really make sense, and the reasons to take it are there. So the distances involved, you can't invade Kyushu from the small islands that you have at this point in time.
Nick says that he almost gave up writing the book due to the magnitude of the Japanese atrocities. And I have to tell you, Nick, I had to stop reading the book on occasion in those chapters about the Japanese atrocities and the terrible results for the Filipinos. Very difficult chapters here and there in the book.
And that was another challenge. I talked about the maps and the Japanese sources, but that was another challenge because I couldn't ignore it. That would be missing a huge part of the story, but I didn't want to overwhelm readers either. And I think James Scott, the person who wrote his book that came out 4 or 5 years ago, 5 or 6 now, I think he goes a little too far into the atrocities. I had to tell the story, but I didn't want to overwhelm readers. And I'm not sure. I'll have to leave it to the readers to decide whether or not I hit the balance properly. Sounds like, Glenn, it sounds like I more or less hit it right. I mean, you didn't throw away the book.
Well, I would say this: I wasn't aware of the other book and the other author, but if he delved more into those atrocities than you did, I frankly don't want to pick up his book and read it because, yes, I mean, this is I'm very fond of about 8 or 9 o'clock at night sitting in my bedroom reading books before I go to bed, and this was a book that I couldn't read before I went to bed because then I wouldn't be able to sleep.
Yeah.
So. Bob Clage has had his hand up for a bit. Bob?
Yes. How much longer was the Battle of Manila extended due to the admiral or whatever it was in charge of the Manila defense that refused to leave after he was ordered to abandon Manila? As a result, we ended up destroying it, but how much longer did it last because of that?
My guess is basically there would not have been a battle at all. So you have a 30-day battle. My guess is that 29 of those days are due to Admiral Iwabuchi basically deciding he wants to take as much of the city with him to atone for his failures as a naval officer. And that has a little to do with Japanese culture. The best way to atone for failure is to get yourself killed. Okay,
what was his disposition after the battle or during the battle?
He kills himself about 5 days before the battle ends, which basically creates a command and control. Well, his command and control breaks down really fast. He loses control of most of his units within the first week. So
it really becomes as you read the book and the city battle plays out. These Japanese are in pockets.
Yeah.
And they're not able to communicate well with each other. There's virtually no command and control after a few weeks. What was fascinating to me, Nick, and if you could comment on this, the American casualties in this battle, as I read it, I'm thinking, wow, how many men did we lose in the Battle of Manila? Relatively speaking, not that many. Do I have that right?
Yes, we lose about 1,000 U.S. Army personnel in the battle. And that sounds like a lot of people, and it certainly is. But it's nothing compared to Stalingrad. It's nothing compared to Leningrad. It's nothing compared to Berlin. It's nothing compared to Shanghai. So it's low cost and relatively fast. So that has a lot to do with the professionalism of the units under MacArthur. And we don't have particularly good doctrine for fighting city battles, but neither do the Japanese. And they do a lot of things. They're building fortifications, and the engineers who are taking them apart are going, I mean, who put these together? Kindergartners? They said they were not really well done. They were random. They could have designed them to kill a lot of Americans. they don't. Well, I mean, they kill some Americans, but they could have been a lot worse. So if you look at an urban battle in that sense, this is relatively fast and relatively inexpensive.
Ben Wright asked the question, what happened to Clark Field, the famous Clark Field that was, so well known before December 7th?
There is about a day and a half battle to take Clark's Field. I actually talk about it in the book in one of the early chapters because it's basically right there along the advance to Manila. So you're literally driving right by it. And because of the hills and the flat terrain where the airfields are, you really have to take it. And then you have to take the mountains or the hills to the west. They're not mountains, they're hills. So that goes on. Another person's asking about supplies. Basically, these guys don't get any. So that's another reason probably why they degrade rather rapidly, is that they aren't able to basically sustain themselves. And in fact, what's interesting is a lot of guys swim out into Manila Bay onto these wrecks and these hulks of ships. And we know, the Americans know they're there, and they basically say, let them, because turns out you can't drink salt water. And these guys don't have food, and they basically that's a great way to die. I mean, they won't get shot at, but they're not gonna be able to leave. So,
yeah. Before I get Al Smith to ask his question, we haven't covered yet. I think you do in the last couple of slides, which we may not get to, Nick, but who really suffers in this battle are the Filipinos themselves. What do we call it? The Manilayanos, I think is
yeah.
what it's pronounced. How many of them die? And not only die, but the suffering, the starvation, there's civilians in the middle of all this battle. Tell us a little bit about that, and then Al, I'd like to ask you to ask your question.
The traditional figure is 100,000 people die in the battle, most of those being civilian residents of the city. Someone actually broke down and tried to figure out how many people that is a day, and the Manila Naval Defense Force was never that good. Now, the answer might be more like 50,000 or 30,000. Well, that's still an enormous amount of dead people. So one of the things, I went to visit Manila around, trying to remember, about 2012, 2013, and it is still a raw wound because there are plenty of people who experience this horrible thing as children. And I cannot imagine, I've never had to be in combat. I have been in a ugly situation once. I did not have any kind of issues like post-stress, just, anything like this, but it involved shooting and stuff like this. But I can only imagine what this would do to you if you were a child, a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old. You wouldn't forget it, particularly if people you knew, family, friends, are killed. So this is something they take with them for a long time, and then it's something you impress on your kids, and those kids are probably still in their 70s. So this is still a really raw wound for the Philippines.
And many of those, say, teenagers, 20-year-olds at that time, go on to be important political figures in the Philippines post-war and in the Cold War.
Yeah. And this does enormous damage to Filipino society and culture. The Philippines, at least in the 40s, was still bilingual. There's still plenty of people who speak Spanish. So many people are killed off in the 40s, particularly in the battle, that English basically wins out, and it wins out really fast. In 1941, half of the newspapers in Manila were Spanish. By 1946, the media comes back, and no one wants a Spanish language newspaper because no one's buying them. So it has that kind of impact. It has, it destroys higher education because you blow up buildings, libraries, it blows up labs. It has enormous ripple effects on society and culture. It's talked about in it dominates the literature. And one of the things I discovered, and this sounds stupid, but it happened, is I'm walking around and it takes me about a day before I realize, wait a minute, I can read everything here. This is an English-speaking city. It was, I finally realized that when I saw a billboard that wasn't in English, and I was like, wow. So the impact is profound, and there are plenty of people in the Philippines who don't speak English, who speak Tagalog or one of the other languages of the islands. But it's still it also aligns the U.S. with the Philippines, although Japanese mismanagement probably had already done that. So they're not exactly the Philippines aren't going to exactly align themselves with the Japanese. They're certainly not going to align themselves with Mao's China. So it has important diplomatic effects that we don't appreciate because they actually work in our favor in a very big way.
Al, we kind of maybe stole some of your thunder, but go ahead and pose your question, Al.
Yeah, you kind of answered my question. If I went to Manila today, and I've never been to Manila, would I know there was ever a battle there? How do they memorialize it, or do they?
Oh, yes, they memorialize it. And if you go to certain places, I mean, I went to Fort Santiago and I got very sad because this is where a lot of people are killed. And I think, as my understanding is, a lot of bodies are still there. They've rebuilt the walled city, the Intramuros. You would be hard pressed to know a battle was taking place there, but there are monuments. And if you walk along Rizal Park, you will notice that none of the vegetation in the park is that old. I mean, their trees are thin because they're only 50 years old or 60 years old. So there's not a lot of old growth among the trees in the park. There are places that are still shot up. Manila is a third world city, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but what I do mean is there is some really strong bifurcation, and sometimes it's only a street. So I saw a mall, a shopping mall that looked like shopping malls that I grew up in, when I was a kid, and then it's literally across the street, a 2-lane street from a ghetto. So there's a lot of uneven economic development. I was doing research in a part of Manila that looked like Beverly Hills. There were Louis Vuitton stores. I had dinner at Chili's, and then I took a cab that got me to my 4-star hotel. But I went through a part of town that looked like Mogadishu. So, and I don't know enough about urban history, particularly the urban history of Manila since 1945 to tell you if all of this is due to the devastation of the city, but there certainly is stuff that I can say, yeah, that happened. That's this, that, and the other thing. So
we have in the chat, and I just unmuted him, Pete Sarmiento. Pete, are you able to speak? Pete? In the chat, Pete Sarmiento says he grew up in Manila, son of a Filipino scout.
Yeah, there are a lot of Filipinos are joining or rallying to the colors, if you will. The Filipino scouts were basically, as I understand it, long-range reconnaissance patrol people. They're doing some irregular warfare. There's one of the things that we tend to forget is that there is a massive insurgency against the Japanese administration of the islands. About 500,000 Filipinos are shooting at the Japanese. Now that's 500,000 on all the different islands, and some islands are more dangerous than others. But these were people who are joining the U.S. Army once the U.S. Army gets back. And I suspect, in some alternate reality, there's, 4 or 5 divisions that are invading Japan if that invasion takes place. So one of the things that we're doing, and now me being a Naval War College professor is starting to show up, we are fighting the Pacific War as if we are a sea power. Now, sea powers tend to be small countries, islands, and peninsulas. The United States is a big continent, but Pacific is a massive ocean. So one of the things we do is one of the things that sea powers do is they have big navies. Okay, we got a huge navy. And then you go and get allies to help you do the ground fighting. And that's what we're doing. We're going to use the Filipinos to fight in the Philippines. We are going to use them. We do use them. Sorry, wrong tense of the verb. And then we're going to use them in Japan. And this is a way to kind of underwrite someone else to do the fighting for you on the ground because it's expensive. So, and one of the other interesting things about Manila that was a bit of a problem is a lot of the city has changed, not only from buildings that are destroyed and not rebuilt, but streets that are renamed, estuaries that are blocked up and rerouted. So that became a bit of an issue. Where am I? Where am I going? How far was this? Why? Where's this street? You're standing on the street, Nick. It's no longer called, Pennsylvania Avenue. It's now called, something else. So, there were a lot of ways in which the city has changed, but there are also ways in which the city is remembered. And there were the Angels of Bataan, the nurses at Santo Tomas. Those ladies kept a lot of people alive, and they've gotten some nice historical coverage.
So, Nick, we're going to have to wind this up here because it is 8:30. Our witching hour has arrived.
Okay.
This has been, for me, a fascinating night. The book is just a fascinating book. There's so many aspects of it that we could not cover in this short period of time. One of the ones I wanted to bring up, I'll mention it, but let's not discuss it just because it's so late, was the parachute dropped by the 11th Division, a regiment of the 11th Airborne, on Corregidor, which in itself is an incredibly courageous and fascinating story as to how that went about. And that's another reason you should all go out and buy Nick's book and read the couple of chapters about the 11th Airborne, that regiment that dropped on this rock, basically, and took Corregidor.
I actually think that chapter is one of the better ones in the book.
I'm sorry we didn't get to it, Nick, but it gives us another reason to have you back on. And we'd love to have you participate when we get involved in subjects that you would find interesting. What are you thinking about writing next, Nick? What's next on your hit list?
Well, first, I accept your offer, and oral contracts are binding in the state of Pennsylvania, so I'll be. Yeah, but no, the next book is a group biography of the 5 men who were 5-star generals, and that's why I'm in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm doing research on MacArthur, and basically the argument is that these gentlemen, these 5 guys, become actually more important after the war than they were before it. They all actually get more, excuse me, they get more important civilian jobs. Marshall becoming Secretary of State, Eisenhower becoming president, MacArthur becoming shogun, and so forth. So, and strategy in World War II shapes strategy in the early Cold War, which basically shapes how the Cold War ends. And when does the Cold War end? When does World War II end? If you're saying 1945, you're wrong. It's 1990. And I have the photograph to prove it, because the peace treaty ending the war with Germany is signed in Moscow in 1990. When did the Cold War start? Well, if you say 1945, 1947, it actually is 1939. So I'm playing with the dates because I'm trying to make a little bit of a interesting new argument. But basically, it's a look at 5 guys who are 5-star generals and their influence on strategy.
That's fascinating. I don't think Ray Brendel is on the program tonight. At least I didn't notice him, Sean. Um, I think you know David Hogan, Nick, uh,
Mhm.
retired director of the Center for Military History. We've had him on a couple times just a couple weeks ago about Omar Bradley. And Ray Brendel was following up with David Hogan, and they exchanged quite a few emails about five-star generals versus generals of the Army versus other titles that have been given in our history. And it is a fascinating subject. So, does your definition of five-star generals include the admirals? Is that
No, it's just the generals. The
generals?
book on the admirals has already been written, and it's called The Admirals. So
Yeah. Yeah.
came out about 10 years ago. So I'm going to be doing the generals, and I spent a lot of time wondering, should I include Hap Arnold? Because was he really Army general or not? Because he's the guy who runs the Air Force. And my answer is yes. I'm going to include him. 5 guys, 5 generals.
Yeah. I'm glad you did. He's one of the more interesting generals, I think, in so many different ways. So,
Yeah.
well, listen, Nick, thank you so very much. Thank you to our audience tonight. And Nick, I hope you'll come back and talk to us about your next book and actually just participate in some of our discussions that you might find interesting. Oh, Ray, I see you there, Ray. I finally saw your name. So, Ray Brendel will be the first guy to buy your book, Nick. Okay. Good night, all. Thank you so very much. We'll see you next week. Sean, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Be sure to join us on Saturday. Movies, Saturday night, baseball game, Monday night, back for Mobile Riverine Force documentary. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone. And the Oilers are dead, so you don't have to root for the Texans or the Titans. They're